If everybody really thought about it, that's what they really want is respect from your peers. It's awesome. It's awesome to have left a mark on the sport. I know that it's been the right way. I know that it's for the right reasons, and that makes me proud. That makes me happy because I feel like I have there's a weight on my shoulders to carry myself in a certain way.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Fitz Nation. As you saw in the introduction, Jim Miller is my guest this week, and then a bonus question at the end from Eric Nixick, and I'll explain that after the Jim Miller interview. But I talked to Jim in mid-January, the day before he actually fought Gabriel Benitez at the UFC Apex, as he started his 2024. But of course, the story that week, and obviously the story going forward with Jim Miller until April, is his appearance at UFC 300. That's because he fought at UFC 100 and UFC 200. Brock Lesnar is the only other fighter that competed on both of those cards. But for Jim Miller, how about the longevity to be doing it for this long and to have the good fortune to line up his schedule that he fought at UFC 100, 200, and now he's scheduled to fight Bobby Green at UFC 300. But I talked to Jim about how he describes his career as he's 40 years old, this long into the game. He holds the UFC records for most appearances. He's in the mid-40s, and he holds the record for most wins. He's at 26. And you could say on this run of momentum that maybe he's never looked better. Now, he was a top-level lightweight early, and he talks about kind of his battle with Lyme disease and how close he was to fighting for a UFC championship. And I'll say never say never. It's probably not going to fight for a UFC title, but he has done a wonderful job at aging in such a physically demanding sport that delivers a lot of injuries, a lot of uncertainty, and he just keeps plugging away in the best way possible. And the fans are really starting to get on board with a guy like Jim Miller, who's largely been an unsung hero over his UFC tenure. I'm excited to see what 2024 brings. I'm excited to see him at UFC 300 against Bobby Green, and it was a pleasure to sit down and chat with him last month. All right. You're the first to help me use this new setup, Jim. Can I write your name on here?
Sure.
Right, Jim F. Miller.
There we go. That'll work.
You said it, not me.
Yeah.
Jim F. Miller.
That's true. Yeah.
How about that?
It's written down. It's got
Jim, I wanted to talk to you because, like, the other day, the fighter meetings aren't long enough.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we have that much longer here, but how do you think about your career at this point?
I mean, at this point, I know it's been a different road that I've had to take. And like there are things that I set out to achieve that I didn't. I haven't gotten that opportunity at the title, but I wouldn't change a thing at this point. Because like the way that I feel is that if I was like, oh, I go back and change one thing, right? Like, okay, either I'm able to pull off one of the subs in the Benson fight, and that gets me a title shot, or maybe I go to the doctor before the Benson fight, and it's like, hey, you've got mono, you're not fighting, and I end up pulling out of that fight. Then it changes other stuff, and like where I'm at in my life, like I couldn't be happier, So, yeah, like it hasn't been easy, but it's been my path, and it's been a ride. It's been an experience, a learning experience,
yeah,
and a humbling experience, and like it's cool to still be going.
Yeah. It's to be applauded. And
Hey.
and I it's like I always love when I hear fighters say, because fighters say a lot of the same things. Like,
Yes.
I'm here to be the best in the world, right? I don't just want to be a champion.
Yeah.
I want to be one of the best in the world. I want to be one of the best of all time. I want to be the name that they're talking about years down the road. And some fighters, and when I kind of press them on that and say, what does that look like to you? Because it's easy to say I want the belt, but what does your career look like? And some fighters have told me, like, a career like Jim Miller, where I just fight. I don't have to be anything but who I am.
and I get to make money and do what I love to do for a long, long time. How does that make you feel? Like, you have set a different type of standard that I think other fighters can admire.
And I appreciate that, right? Like that's I think if everybody really thought about it, that's what they really want is respect from your peers, right? Like, you know, like if you're a brain surgeon, you want other brain surgeons to think that, like, man, you're good. I love what you're doing. Like, not just Joe Schmo, right? So like to have that respect for my peers, and you know, like I was kind of flabbergasted. I was doing an interview the other day, and the guy's like, "Yeah, you know, like I'm gonna ask you your Mount Rushmore, you know, your MMA Mount Rushmore," and he's like, "You're on Andre Arlovsky's," and I'm like, "Sorry, what?"
Yeah.
like how the fuck am I on Andre Arlovsky's? Like, this guy was a world champ before I even started training. Like, I was still in high school. You know, like, he's only a couple of years older than me, but he had that earlier start. And, you know, it's like, yeah, it's like to hear stuff like that, and, you know, and to get to talk to the guy, you know, here and there, and, and you know, it's awesome. It's awesome to have left a mark on the sport thus far, you know, and like hopefully the mark that I leave is bigger, but I know that it's been the right way. Like, I know that it's for the right reasons, and that makes me proud. That makes me happy because, you know, like sometimes it's like, yeah, you know, these guys are throwing punches at each other. You know, like like Dana says, like doesn't care what words get said between one another, and I 100% agree with that, because we are in a sport that is it's violent, but people are watching. Kids are watching, you know, like my kids see everything I do, you know, they're old enough now. They're on the tech and YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that. And it's like, they see it, and they see me do the interviews. They see me, you know, do all this stuff. So, for them and for all the other kids that are watching, I feel like I have, there's a weight on my shoulders to carry myself in a certain way.
Can you describe what it's like to almost free yourself of chasing the championship? Because I'll say never say never. And like you told us the other day, you got years left, right? Yeah. Not just one fight. It's not UFC 300 isn't the finish line. It'd just be a cool thing to experience. But I feel like you have a healthy enough mindset to be like, if I don't fight for a title, that doesn't matter. What matters is the life that I've built. Like, what was the freedom in kind of realizing that, or surrendering to that, and not putting so much pressure on yourself?
You know, I think it really came from that, the moment I decided that I was going to retire. Like, I was training for UFC 196, and this was before I was diagnosed with Lyme, and I couldn't do the live training. I think I sparred maybe twice for that fight. Like, the only thing I could do was hop on the treadmill, you know. Like, the symptoms that I was dealing with, I could do that easy cardio. I couldn't do high intensity stuff. And even for a while after, it took a while for me to be able to do, you know, like, to lift or anything like that, because, like, my nervous system was so shot. You know, like, and I fought, or it was like the fight prior to that, I fought, and I was like, man, like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. You know, when I fought Chiesa, it's like, you know, I was going out, I had a great fight. You know, I was fighting well, I was beating him up, and then I got caught in, you know, a weird spot. He hit me with a good shot, rocked me, and next thing you know, he's on my back. But I was just so banged up, and, you know, like, that was leading up to 196, and I was like, man, like, I think we need to call it. Like, I'm in the middle of workouts, and I'm like, when I'm standing up, I'm holding my knees standing up like an old man, and like I said, not able to do those workouts. So I was like, okay, well, let's get through this one, and then, like, because I want to know when you know, that last fight is. I want to know that, because I want to be able to win it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to be one of my peers that it's like, after a bad performance, after, like, oh, if I don't win this, I'll retire, or this or that. That's not the way I want to do it. I want to know that it's my last one. So that's what I was gearing up for, and I literally found out. I was out here in Vegas, and I found out like 2 days prior to the fight. My doctor called me. He's like, I think you got Lyme disease. We'll start treatment when you get back. And it's like, okay, well, let's still ask us to be on 200, and we'll see how things go. And I felt like I went from like my potential doubled. I was probably only at 20%,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to 40, and like, yeah, it felt great. But like, already having it in my head that I was like, all right, this is it. Like, I've got like 2 fights left. Like, that's it. Like, just survive this one and get through that next one, and then we get to hang it up.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to call it quits and figure something else out. And really, I think making that decision, but then figuring out that I was in a fight every single day, and then like knowing I had that opponent and kind of treating it like that, like, hey, well, I'm going to fight every day. So I need to take my meds. I need to take my supplements. I need to stay active and be working out consistently throughout the year and change my diet and get better sleep and all this stuff. And attacked it like that. Attacked it like it was a fight. Helped me get through it. But like already making that choice is why like I've been able to just kind of relax with this and appreciate every opportunity that I've gotten to fight since then. Because honestly, if I didn't have the doc that I've got, or if it went undiagnosed, like I would have retired, years ago.
Yeah.
And it would have been the way, my career wouldn't have been what it was.
Yeah, and now essentially you've gotten, it's not quite 100 months, but we're approaching UFC 297.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like nearly 100 months of feeling that grateful aspect of getting to compete instead of the unknown of trying to chase down some ambiguous goal.
Yeah.
What would you say is the greatness in longevity? Because I think a lot of people look at the greatness of accomplishments and they kind of forget about the greatness of doing it for decades on end.
The thing is like, it's obviously, I got into the sport to be the best. Like I when I was training for my first fight, I wasn't training to fight that guy. I was training to fight BJ Penn.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I set my goals. So it's still there. That desire for it is still there. But like the longevity thing, man, it's probably the hardest thing.
Right.
Probably the hardest thing in this game.
Yeah.
It's not an easy task. It's, we say like the grind of camp, right? And that's what it is. It's day in, day out, pushing yourself more and more. Like we're not working out to just sustain and maintain stuff. Like you're working out to push yourself to the max, like every day. And it's hard. And you're also fighting other people that they get to have their say, their opinion in things, and you get banged up, and, sometimes mistakes are made, and you have to deal with bumps and bruises and injuries in training, and it wears on you mentally, not only physically, but, you can't get into the Hall of Fame in baseball playing 3 seasons, or football or basketball. Like you gotta have that career, right? And like we don't have seasons, so really it comes down to like number of fights for us, right? And it's like I personally feel like you get to 10 fights in the UFC, you've been around for a while. Like that's an accomplishment, and then to quadruple that is just
it's surprising even yourself.
Yeah, it's silly. It's silly.
So UFC 300's coming up, and obviously that's kind of taken on a life of its own as you are competing on UFC 300. And I was surprised in talking to you about it this week, where it seems less important to you and more important to everybody else.
Yeah.
That's probably kind of a microcosm of the big picture of things, right? Like where you set something, and once you follow that path, when you're on it yourself,
Yeah.
it matters less because it's about the getting there.
Yeah.
And to everybody else, it's like they're going to want to put that on your resume and talk about it more than you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, can you just speak about UFC 300 and where you're at with it right now that it's kind of on the horizon, and maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't?
Yeah, like I put it out there. I think it was probably 2019.
Yeah,
that I was like, I'm gonna maybe I'll get to UFC 300, and it was like a joke.
50 fights in UFC 300, right?
Yeah, like everybody laughed, right? And here we are, and like I'm performing well. I feel good in training. Like I threw it out there to like, hey, like maybe I was gonna retire at 200. Okay, we'll throw it out to 300, and like throw a marker out there way ahead. The way I'm performing, like it's cool. It'll be cool to be on the card. But like I told you guys the other day, like if they offered like main event and the Atlantic City card
right
a week prior, that's a bigger day for him, like so. Yep. So it's like it's important. It'll be cool, but it's at this point it's only just a line in the book.
It's very cool to hear somebody like you talk about it like that, because it makes you realize it's about casting out this big goal, and maybe it can happen and maybe it can't, and then when it's upon you, it's just like it wasn't about that in the first place. It was about all the time in between.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's like mission accomplished.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, seriously. So it's like I said, it'll be cool if everything pans out and we get it, but if something happens, like a lot of people have been like, oh, why is he taking this fight in January if he's going to fight, that one?
Yeah.
Like, what if he gets hurt? Like, I could get hurt doing anything.
Yeah.
So, like, that's the nature of the beast at this point is I hurt myself bending over to pick stuff up off the floor. So
we're of that age.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, I threw it out there. We're just about there, and I'm going to continue on. Whether I fight at 300 or not. The goalposts have moved, you know, and that's okay.
Well, best of luck this weekend. They're getting ready to line you up for the weigh-ins, but always good to talk to you, Jim. We'll see you at UFC 400, okay?
All right, sounds good.
It was great to catch up with Jim Miller in January when he was in Las Vegas, right before he beat Gabriel Benitez. And now, of course, he's been scheduled for that UFC 300 fight coming up against Bobby Green. And his 2024, Jim Miller's, is setting up to potentially be like Bobby Green's 2023 when Bobby Green won a couple of fights. He got a headliner against Grant Dawson, and he won that fight as an underdog, and then he got another big opportunity to close the year in Austin. Of course, it didn't go his way. But for Jim Miller, finished Gabriel Benitez in January. Now he fights at UFC 300. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs on what he does there. And if he wins, now all of a sudden, he's in the rankings again. And he's at a point in his career where, because he has done so many favors to the UFC by always making weight, always saying yes, always holding up his end of the bargain, well, I think Dana White and company want to do Jim Miller some favors, as he's now 40 years old and he's been doing a lot of winning, and he has, put together this career that has spanned a long, long time, and maybe just now he's getting his due. There's a couple of concepts, because on this show, I always liked you to, learn something, right, as you walk away. And usually that comes in the forms of listening to the fighters tell their stories and what life lessons they have battled and learned along the way in their career and their lives that they live. But there's two different concepts that kind of relate to a Jim Miller. And one of them is what I've talked about on this show, especially to start 2024, about ego. And I watched a video on YouTube recently because it was called something about like how to not let your ego control you. And if our egos control us, then it usually leads to bad things. And it might blow up in our face unexpectedly, even though it's this quest to get more attention and to be more ambitious. Fighting against your ego, the video was a TED Talk, and it was about a tennis coach. And he talked about how really it can come down to a very simple concept. Are we task-based? Do we have the focus on the task in front of us? That's what we want. Or do we have the focus on the outcome that we're going for? And that's what we want to avoid. But the thing is, it's very unnatural to put away the outcome and to just focus on the task at hand. And we see it all the time in the UFC, right? Everybody wants the outcome. They want the belt. They want the wins. They want the social media headlines. They want the followers. They want the clicks. And that's how the world works, especially in our sport right now. But really, it does not lead to the most fulfilling things. It does not lead to you, feeling content about where you're at. And for Jim Miller, I think he's fought against that. He's always been about the task. Even now, he's not about fighting at UFC 300. He's about winning his next fight. He's about wanting to get the best out of what his abilities are. And so I just think it's very important for all of us to keep in mind, be focused on the task. For me, it's not about social media followers. It's not about people talking about me in headlines. It's about me doing the best job that I can for my next UFC assignment. All of the other stuff gets taken care of, and maybe it'll be taken care of years later than I would have expected, but I'll put myself in a better position if I am focused on the task right in front of me. So that was one, be task focused and not outcome focused. And I was just reminded of it the other day, and gosh, Jim Miller has really put together the career because he has had that focus throughout the years. The other thing is, I read a book recently, and I have it up on my shelf. It's called From Strength to Strength. It's by Arthur C. Brooks. He actually just wrote a book with Oprah, actually, and I think it's called Anything You Want, and I got to read that one. But this one was recommended by Peter Attia, longevity doctor, and I like Peter Attia's podcast. I recommend this. Really, I think it's for people who are in their 50s and 60s. I think 40s, too, is good. It's about finding what we want to do in the second half of our lives. But I would say for Jim Miller in his career, a lot of this could apply from strength to strength. And that's the bonus question that I mentioned at the end of last week's episode that I talked to Eric Nixick about, is how fighters like Jim Miller have maybe gotten better or certainly been able to stay at the top level for a lot longer than most. And it's not because they're more athletic, but it's because they are smarter. They know what they're good at. They can put the puzzle pieces together and see the big picture in a way that you can't really do when you don't have as many years in the game. I think that's true for Jim Miller. I think it's true for Sean Strickland, and that's why I spoke about it with Eric Nixick.
I sat down with Jim Miller recently.
Yeah.
And he is a guy that has peaked physically.
Right.
But the different realm has allowed him to continue to fight at a high level, thrive athletically at a high level. And it's not because he's more explosive, stronger, and faster. It's the opposite. He's just more crafty and smarter.
Exactly.
Sean Strickland is not more explosive than he used to be.
Right.
He's just much, much better at thinking about how he wants to do that.
Mm-hmm.
How do you manage that or think about that? Because even us, like, we've peaked in certain ways.
Right.
We're on the downtrend in certain ways, but we're going to get to a different part of our lives where we put puzzle pieces together more easily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you think about that concept from fighters? Because I would say, too, Tony Ferguson kind of still relying on that just awkward approach, unorthodox style, explosiveness, his athleticism that's just not there anymore.
And it kind of ran out, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's funny that you mentioned Tony, because I remember when Tony would come in here 10 years ago and the training that he was doing back then, you're like, how is this beneficial?
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then you're like, okay, but this guy's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Is it because he's really good, or is it the training that he's doing? Like, I literally have it still to this day. That's his slack line. Dude, he set up
He has a slack line.
Bro, he brought a slack line in the gym because he wanted
to work on balance.
I'm like,
right.
but 10 years ago, you're like, oh, is this what we need to be doing?
Yeah.
Right? But and then in your mind, like, okay, that you're not really working on basics.
Yeah.
You're not really developing new skills or talent.
Right.
Whereas I think, like, when you see Jim Miller, I would imagine that he's probably reinvented himself a number of times. Like his like career's like in thirds, you know, like now he's at that fine wine stage where he probably doesn't spar but once a week and does this and maintains more of his body, does all these things. But yes, taking all that anecdotal evidence that he's had over the years and is now, dude, the guy, I think he's better than he's ever been at points, you know? So the thing too I notice is in the room, guys are so fixated on winning rounds in sparring. I have to win. I didn't win that round. Okay, well, what were you working on? So let's use jiu-jitsu for example for you. If you were working on your Kimura game, right, and you didn't do any submission for 2 months but the Kimura, you might get beat in a lot of places. You might get beat over and over and over again. But if you stay focused on that one technique, I bet you over 2 months you'll get pretty damn good at that Kimura. But you lost tons and tons and tons and tons of rounds to actually get good at that Kimura, right? But what did you do? You stepped outside your comfort zone. You said it was okay to lose, to grow, to get better.
Mm-hmm.
But some guys are so fixated on, I have to win every round. I'm afraid to work a little southpaw because I might lose the round. Who gives a shit about losing rounds in the gym, especially when you're not in camp? Outside of camp is when you should really be growing.
Yeah.
Really be trying new things. Really trying to step outside of your comfort zone and not be afraid to lose rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Losing rounds is opening your doors for growth, right? That's the thing I've noticed a lot of like guys lately, that why it's so important to get right back in the gym, because your camps or your career should be based on growing and fight specifics when you have an opponent. And I don't see enough guys doing that.
Yeah.
I don't see enough guys that are actually like coming into like, hey, when's the last time you threw on your gi? When's the last time you've done judo? Right? Outside of camp.
Right.
Puna, go train at with Ali and the boys over at the PI. Get some different looks.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to travel and go see what other gyms are doing.
Right.
What are you doing by that? You're growing. You're showing new. Hey, maybe they do something different over there. Maybe they add a new element to your game. Maybe it's a new detail. But constantly just staying in this little circle, I don't think shows, the element of you trying to grow and to get better. Don't be afraid to lose rounds.
Yeah.
Right?
Because then when that cup is empty, it's empty.
Dude, you're done.
Yeah.
You're done.
So grow in the transitions.
Grow in the transitions. Have the understanding of, okay, we have a fight. It's going to be very specific to your game plan, your details. Once that's over, and here's what the other side of this too, what it does. Julian Rosa, he hasn't fought in however long. We've been working on southpaw stuff for the last 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So now, do you think he's comfortable now installing southpaw series stuff into his fight?
Right.
Absolutely he is. Because there's rounds now where I said, hey, this round, only southpaw.
Yeah.
Did you think he lost a couple rounds? For sure. But after 6 months, you think he's pretty damn good at fighting southpaw?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
What happens if you break your right hand? Oh, now we got to fight southpaw. Now we got to transition to some other stuff. But you feel comfortable there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So don't be so set on Chris Curtis is like that all the time. I lost 2 rounds a day. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
What were you working on?
Yeah.
Were you working on something different?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to throw kicks the whole round. Well, you might lose a couple rounds, bro. It's okay,
Yeah. It's like the greatness and longevity can be underrated. I think it's definitely more celebrated now with athletes in MMA, but certainly guys like Tom Brady who just did it well into his 40s and stuff. And then I remember Peter King, the NFL writer, and you'll like this, talking to Tom Brady, and he was talking about Phil Simms, who was retiring at 38 or whatever it was. And he's like, gosh, I finally have all the answers to the test, and now I can't use it. And that was such a big part of the magic of Tom Brady. He had the answers to the test at 38, and he went till 45.
And isn't it crazy? Like these contact sports.
And so I think of Jim Miller.
Yeah.
Is a guy that's man, he's got a lot of answers right now for different situations.
And you're seeing it now.
He's not gonna never lose for the rest of his life.
Right.
Probably won't be a champion.
Right.
But he's 40, and he's like, yeah, I wanted to fight at UFC 300. Now I'm doing that, but now it's not about that. Now I just want to keep going because I feel good.
Yeah.
And I figured out a lot, you know.
But isn't it crazy too in this sport and all these sports, your next fight might be your last, and you didn't sign up for that.
No. Yeah.
You didn't want it to be your last, right? So I tell guys all the time, and I say it every fight week, don't get mad at signing the posters. Right?
That's a tedious thing for a lot of them, right?
Because I got goosebumps. You dream about it. You dreamt about signing those posters. And then how many times you been in that room and hear guys, God damn it, how many more posters I got to sign? One day those posters are going to be gone, dude. And you're going to miss signing those damn posters. Don't bitch about signing the posters.
And you're going to have one on your wall.
Yep.
And it's going to bring back the whole week and the whole experience.
Yep. And I don't really remember the fights as much as I do the fight weeks.
Right.
I remember the team dinners. I remember the weeks, the week of the fight week and all the stuff, the antics and everything else. Why every time we have a team dinner, I make sure to tell the waitress to bring him out a cake. I always say it's your birthday.
Nice.
It's your birthday week.
Nice.
So like last week, Chris Curtis is like, it's your birthday. And he's like, the cake comes out.
Yeah.
So enjoy those. Enjoy those times, man, because like I said, I was with Martin Kampman when he didn't think his last fight was going to be Carlos Condit, but concussions made it his last fight. And he didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
And then now think about that spiral. So, enjoy signing those posters.
Awesome, bro. Thanks for doing this.
Always, bro.
Really
My
appreciate
pleasure,
it,
dude.
That'll do it for this episode of Fitz Nation. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I'll come to you again soon with another interview from a big newsmaker in the UFC world. Thank you for watching. Talk to you next time.